Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar with Naked Life. I'm Anna, I'm one of the campaign managers here at Birchal. Just before I introduce Dave, I'd love to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I'm beaming in from today. I'm based on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging. Now, Birchal is working with Naked Life on a very exciting upcoming crowdsource funding offer. What is crowdsource funding, you might ask? I imagine some of you might be quite new to the concept. So crowdsource funding, or you may have also heard of it referred to as equity crowdfunding, is a relatively new form of fundraising in Australia that allows startups and small businesses or growing businesses to raise capital from a large number of smaller or retail investors, but also wholesale or sophisticated investors. Now that's through an online platform such as Birchal. So instead of seeking funding from traditional sources such as banks or venture capitalists, companies can turn to the general public, often their communities, their customers who love them, to raise money in exchange for shares or equity in their business. Now, Birchal Financial Services will be the licensed intermediary for this offer, and the information and discussion in this Q&A is for informational purposes and should not be considered as advice or a recommendation to invest. Please, as always, we recommend you do your own research. Always consider the offer document and general CSF risk warning before investing. That is all available on birchal.com, which is probably how you found us here today. So today I'm joined with David Andrew, founder of Naked Life. Just a little bit of quick admin because you don't want to hear from me all day. We'll be running this as a presentation from David, and then we'll have a Q&A format. So you'll see a little Q&A button down the bottom. Please, as we're going through, type your questions and we'll have lots of time to get to those at the end. If we don't get to your questions, don't worry. We've got a record of them and the team will be able to reach out to you afterwards. We are also recording today's session. So if you have to run off halfway through, no stress at all. We're all really busy. We'll be circulating this afterwards as well. So that's enough from me. I'm thrilled to hand over to David, who's going to tell you all about the journey of Naked Life.
Thanks, Hannah. And thanks everyone who's taken the time to come look at this webinar. We've been really humbled in the interest we've had both in the industry and in Naked Life over the past week and a half since we've opened the EOI. So big thank you to everyone for giving us your precious time. Quickly, we'll just take you through what we'll talk about today, a little bit about our mission, a little about who the Naked Life Group is and our journey, and then our traction and the opportunity into the future, a little bit about our raise, and then obviously we'll get into the question and the answer. A little bit about us. So our mission as our group is to give choice back to consumers, and we have really held this to our core since we first launched in 2016, because we want to be able to accelerate the adoption of better for you products for Australians, and in the end, trying to make healthier and easier choice. And I guess what we mean by that is, there's great options out there that are better for you that you don't have to compromise on, but it's pretty hard to get those out into the mainstream, and it's pretty hard to get those into every corner, every single store in Australia. So it's often very hard to try and get your hands on better for you products or have a better for you lifestyle. And core of what we're about is to try and make that choice easier by making really great tasting products that are better for you. You'll see a bit more about that in our next slide, which is our journey, because this is our journey from 2016. So if you I guess where we started was back in 2016. I remember I used to love soft drink, and I'd given up the sugar back in 2016. And back then there was actually no soft drink out there that was sugar-free and free from artificial sweeteners. There was nothing available. And, I was working as a management consultant at the time, and I tried to get really, really healthy and cut sugar out, but there was just nothing there. And so, when I started having a look around at what the options were, and I hadn't sat there and thought, great time to, go down the path of food and drink. I just started making my own in the kitchen bench, using sort of natural sweeteners that were available in supermarkets and some flavors and the likes. And it actually wasn't until I went over to the US and I saw that there was a sugar-free, naturally sweetened soda over there that was turning over $100 million a year, and they'd only been around for a year or two. And I tried it, and it just tasted like crap. and the stuff that I was making on my bench at home just tasted better. And so that was the shifting moment for me, where I thought, all right, well, I can now see the path here, and it's making bloody good tasting soft drinks for the market. So went away and basically took the year off to develop our first SKUs of Naked Life, and away we went. And so across our journey, we've ended up we've ended up going into a couple of different areas, because as we've grown, we've seen some great opportunities, and some of which we launched Naked Life to the market, and then we realized that there was room for tonic water. No one had done a sugar-free all natural tonic water. So we were the first in Australia to launch with a tonic water, which was great. And at the same time as we were doing this, we realized that there was no great opportunities, no great icy poles that weren't full of artificial sweeteners, colors, and the like. So we actually launched the No Nasties project in parallel with a commitment to get rid of 500 tonnes of sugar from Australian families every year. And we had our Sugarfree product, which you can actually get on the shelves at Coles and Woolies, and it's a fantastic product. And that's been a great journey for us. But as we ticked along, we realised that we were growing our company and growing out both brands. But it was only in 2020 when we started reducing. I remember I started reducing my own alcohol intake. I don't mind to drink, but at that stage, I'd naturally been pulling back and started drinking mid-strength beer, or starting to drive more and looking for more options. And there was just nothing out there. And once again, it was probably at a time where if you were drinking, the only thing available was the lemon, lime and bitters. And if you were drinking that, and if you were out trying to celebrate, you were sort of looked on a little bit strangely if you weren't drinking. And so I started having a look around and started seeing the numbers of people out there that actually weren't drinking. And it just blew me away. I still remember the very first time I saw it, and the stat that 20% of Australians do not drink at all. And that was back in 2020, and that's been increasing. When we looked at that, and we looked at the growth rates of people who were abstaining or reducing, we realized that there was something here. So we went really hard at that market in 2020 and 2021, invested a lot in developing an amazing range of products, and just took that to market. And the rest is how do you say? The rest is history to lead us to where we are now, which is the number one. We're number one in grocery, and we've just got a great range of drinks and an amazing group of supporters who are getting behind us. So that sort of brought us a little bit to where we are. But I'll give you, I skipped over a slide, which makes life a little bit harder, I think. So I'll give you then a bit more detail about that. So we are, the Naked Life group is 3 specific groups. So we're the Naked Life non-alcoholic spirits, where we were voted the number 1 non-alc company in Australia, and between Naked Life Spirits and Naked Life, we were the number 1 fastest growing company in Australia last year, according to Australian Financial Review, which was an amazing thing for us and our team to be able to hang our hats on. It was really exciting to have that. And so, and between those 2 businesses, with our Naked Life non-alcoholic spirits, it's all about being able to create. What we're trying to do is trying to divorce celebrations from alcohol. So in the past, if you're going to celebrate something, you had to have a drink. Whereas what we're trying to put out there now is a new option. There is something that can actually fit that gap, that if you do want something that's not alcohol, but you'd still like to consume something, there's now something for that. So, and it's been amazing, the response we've had from the Australian market on that. And so obviously I'll speak a lot about Naked Life non-alcoholic spirits today, because that's one of our key focus areas for growth. And then we've also got our Naked Life soft drink range, soft drinks, iced teas, functional beverages. And that's also another large growing area that we've got. And we've got our drinks across major petrol and convenience chains. We've got them in Woolworths, and it's a great part of the business. And we're really proud of what we've done with the beverage range. And then on the No Nasties project side, once again, we've got 6 different products in Coles and Woolworths. But today we'll be talking mostly about where we see the growth of our business, which is coming from Naked Life non-alcoholic spirits and the Naked Life beverage range. As an investor, though, you're investing in Topco, which is the Naked Life group, and as such, you'll have access to all of the businesses. So a little bit about our traction, and a little bit on the slide, but bear with me as I walk through it. So Naked Life, we're the number 1 non-alcoholic brand in Australia. And that's from a few different positions. So we're the number 1 by revenue and volume in grocery in Australia. We're voted the number 1 non-alcoholic producer of the year. We're number one by brand recognition in the market in non-alc compared to our competitors. And from us, these are things that we're so proud of. So we worked so hard to get to that point in a short amount of time. But if I go into a little bit more detail, if we look at on the top right, that's sales across Coles and Woolworths for a quarter, and you can see that as a brand, we're outselling some of the major brands in there, such as Heineken, Great Northern, James Squire, Gordon's, and even our closest competitor in the non-alc spirit or cocktail category, we outsell by over 3 times. And so we're really stoked about that, because it's really a testament to how the team that we have pulled together some amazing products that really fit for the consumer. And even, we've got a very wide range in grocery, but even when we look at the top selling SKUs, so if you go to the bottom right, even our G&T, in store for store outsells Gordon's G&T and all the other G&Ts on the market. And we actually have 8 of the top 10 selling SKUs or stock keeping units in grocery. So, we're really stoked with what we've managed to achieve to do that. And it's really helped to set a platform for us for our future growth, particularly with the brand awareness that we have and the return customer purchase rates. It's really been really setting us up for success. I want to talk a little bit about the market then, because where did this come from? Where is it going? What's the industry? And I wanted to go into a little bit about that, because we see that this is a structural shift that's happening in drinking. It's not a fad that sort of popped up where the newest flavor or style of drink has just popped up. This is a fundamental shift in the way that Australians and the globe is actually treating alcohol. So this isn't just happening in Australia. This is happening all around the world. And so at the moment, the market of no-low or non-alcoholic and low alcohol, it's a massive market globally, $14.7 billion and growing. And so in Australia last year, it was about 152 million for the non-alcs. But then you look at the growth. So if you have a look at what the growth rates for alcohol, which are very low single digits, but you look at the growth for non-alc in liquor stores last year, the volume growth was 150%, and in on-premise it grew 130%. So you can see where this growth is coming from, and you can see consumers are voting with their feet, or voting with their dollars, I should say. And so, if you look at the size of the market, it's super exciting. It's super exciting where it's going. But then if we dig down into a little bit about where that growth is coming from, so there's 71% of 18 to 34-year-olds this year are going to increase their no-low consumption. That's a massive number. When you look at all the other types of beverages are in decline or stagnant, there's this massive shift in how people are drinking. On another side, there's 400,000 Australians are going to actually quit alcohol in 2023. Like these are big numbers of people that get us very excited. So, when people have said that this market has just popped up out of nowhere, it's not so much that it's popped up out of nowhere. It's more so that there wasn't the need there wasn't the products to meet the customer needs. So there was always this underlying need that until there was great products on the market that could actually deliver to what customers needed, it was, there was no market. So that's why it's just exploded out of nowhere. And so last year, 58% of consumers tried a non-alc beverage for the first time. And so you can see that the market, this structural shift is happening in consumers, and it's not going away. So, and particularly if you look at the younger demographics, the instances of drinking is so much lower compared to the older generation. So the new generations of people coming through, the new consumers, are fundamentally drinking less. So this is not only is it here to stay, it's going to increase into the future. There's another point in there as well about the fact that 51% of consumers are actually looking for sugar-free alternatives. And the reason why that's important is in the context of this non-alcoholic market, the Naked Life and where we've taken it to is, we see sugar-free really, really important. And so, how are we going to win in this market? So we know the industry is growing. We know that consumers are all changing their drinking habits, and it's not even non-drinkers. It's people like myself who drink a little bit, but also sometimes don't want to drink. So it's not this hard and fast consumer. It's actually everyone there. And so what is the key point to get the consumer over the line? There's 4 main factors that positions Naked Life in what we think is the best position to take on this growing market. And they're 4 things. It's the taste, and it's the fact that there's better for you. There's an authenticity in how we've pulled it together, and there's the convenience of it. So I'll go through these one by one because they're all incredibly important, but I'll start with the most important one, taste. You know, if something doesn't taste good, you're not going to get repurchased. It's just as simple as that. We've had 7 years now doing sugar-free drinks, food, you name it. And if something doesn't taste good, people aren't going to buy it. And so when we pulled our product together, it was the most important part for us is making sure that the taste was bang on. And, you know, as a group, as a company, we're so, we love creating products, and we love creating products that taste fantastic. And there's a few things that we did differently in pulling together the non-alc range that were important. And as an example, like we've got a Negroni spritz. And if anyone's a Negroni drinker out there, you'd probably sit and say, there's no way you can do a non-alc Negroni. It's thick, it's sweet, it's bitter. It's got all these things that if you're a Negroni drinker are pretty amazing. And yeah, it's pretty hard to redo a non-alcoholic Negroni. So what we've done with all our ranges though, is things need to be far enough away so people can enjoy it as something different and enjoy the complexity, but not be always comparing it to the fact that, oh, that's just a crappy Negroni. So as an example, we've got a Negroni Spritz, which is one of our top sellers. It's won a silver medal actually in an alcohol awards. And that, you know, it's a spritz, and it's our version on a take of a Negroni, similar to our margarita. It's our take on a margarita in a spritz form, such that it's, you know, it still has all the hallmarks of what a margarita is, but is it one of those is it something that you're going to get in a bowl at a big bowl out in a big Mexican restaurant? No, it's slightly different to that. But because we've taken this approach, we found our consumers have this view that they know what they're going to get, and it's authentic in flavor. So it brings that authenticity side in. I say all that, but then we've got our GMT where there's a little one of our staff members was at a party the other night, and he was there. It was probably 2 a.m, and they were all drinking away, and someone was drinking our non-alc GMTs, and he looked over and it's like, oh, that's an interesting drink for 2 a.m. She's like, oh, are these non-alcoholic? And she didn't even know. So there are some of them here that actually, you know, which we definitely, you know, we hang our hat on the fact that they taste just as good, if not better, than the alcoholic version. The better for you part is really important because, you know, I think with less than 10 calories and being sugar-free, I think as people are looking for something to drink, they also don't want to, you know, put on excess weight. They don't want it to be bad for them. We spoke a little bit about authenticity, but the convenience is a really important part as well. Because as we started this, we wanted to have the top 10 flavors in Australia. So if people wanted to try a non-alc, there was something for them. Because back when we started, there was only gin. And if you didn't drink gin, there was no non-alc gins available. So from a convenience point of view, it's really important that you're available where people want to buy you. You're available in a flavor that they're interested in having, and in a format that they can grab and take away. So instead of buying a $40 bottle of spirits, you can buy a $15 4-pack, which is an acceptable way in to try something. So that's why we believe with these elements, we're best placed to really take on this growing market. So if we talk about where the growth comes from, because we do have a large percentage of the major grocery in Australia, it's a really strong area where we're at, but there's still, you know, whilst we've got 2,200 of the stores, you know, currently, there's still about 9,000 grocery outlets in Australia. So there's headroom there. So that we can gain a lot more traction through distributing. There's also the key point is we do have a really large footprint already of where you can buy us. And so the key point of locking in on what we've already achieved is our penetration rates are still quite low. Non-alc penetration rates are still quite low. So as an example, we've got about 1% penetration for, you know, of everyone who goes into the supermarkets. Yet there's 71% of Australians are looking to reduce their alcohol intake. So there's such a large area there for us, but we just need to reach them. We haven't run a major marketing campaign yet. We haven't done a big awareness campaign to try and actually bring everyone in. It's been quite guerrilla in the way we've marketed cans in hands and sampling. So for us, that's a really big driver for us. It's also, sorry, there's just a fire engine going past. Please excuse that. I'll sort of pause for a moment. But we're really excited about the fact that it's the tip of the iceberg of people who are starting to come into our into non-alc. We need to make sure they know about us. We need to know they know how it fits into their lives. So there's a heap of growth that's going to come just from the distribution we already have. But then we flick across to the liquor stores on premise and key venues. We've barely scratched the surface. We're in probably about 600 liquor and on premise out of what you can see here, almost 40,000. So there's a lot of work we have to do here, but what we're really excited about is in the past few months, we've had really amazing traction in these areas. Sorry, just have to wait for the fire engine to go past again. There we go. So these are our key growth areas, because you can see, when there's 40,000 plus outlets up for grabs, and we're only in a few hundred of them, there's massive growth we can take from this. So, but even then, we've set really good platforms to grow in these areas. Such an example, we've got some ranging in Dan Murphy's. We're in first choice liquor, so we've already started penetrating into these areas. For on premise, as an example, we've had some really great traction in the fact that we've just signed up with Oz Venue Co, who runs 200 of the best venues in Australia, the best on-premise venues, places like the Espy, or some in Victoria. All these, they're really high-end places, and we've now signed a deal with them as their key non-alc partner. So that's only been in a few months. So we're really starting to grow in this area. The other side is the key venues. So there's about 2,000 key accounts out there, and by that I mean great stadiums, things like Village Cinemas, all these other styles of places that which we're really focused on opening up. And in the past few months, we've signed a great deal with Optus Stadium, which is a multi-year deal to be their non-alc partner. Melbourne Convention Centre, we've just recently signed. We've got a few more stadiums coming up. We've got a lot of the hotels, we've got Village Cinemas, and this has all just been in the past few months of us focusing on these new distribution areas. So the headroom to grow in this industry is massive. And that's part of the reason why we're really going into this capital raise, because we really need to make sure that we've got the resources to chase these new opportunities and to make sure we stay ahead of the market. The other opportunity is international, and we'll touch on this, but at this point in time, we've got our toes in the water, but for international, but we've got preliminary market testing with distributors in Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei, Fiji, and New Caledonia. And we've also got agreements underway to sign for some incredibly large countries such as Indonesia and the Middle East, where, if you can imagine, the Middle East and Indonesia as well have a very high Muslim population and a very strong need for non-alcohol. So we've got our toes in the water there. We're in advanced discussions with distributors in Japan, Hong Kong, and China, which is incredibly exciting. They're obviously very large markets. But one of the key areas we're really looking to go into is in the US. So we were over in the US last year, and we've already joined with one of the major distributors over there to start our distribution. So they're already a distributor of 30,000 other products, and we're just in the process of signing that off as a distributor in the US. So it's a key area for us to focus on in the next 24 months, but that's obviously something that we don't rush into. It's something that we need to do in a very disciplined way, and that's why we're testing the markets first before we really go in and put major investment into that. But in that testing in the market is the other area we need to run with, that we need to have some investment to help set up, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of costs associated with becoming market ready for new countries. There's new packaging, new formulations, all these other elements. So, but we definitely see that, given the fact that we've got such a strong place in the market in Australia, we're already having large conversations with some of the best distributors and large companies over in the UK, over in the US, who see us as a natural potential license deal for them, because we're safe and we're proven as a non-alc option. So it's super exciting. A lot on our plate, but we're really excited to explore it. So look, I think I've probably covered all these areas as we've gone through, but the key areas that we are raising funds for is for working capital. Obviously, we've got new product developments and launch activities, but also scaling up the inventory for our growing supply. So for our growth plans, working capital is quite an intensive business when you're producing and have inventory. So that's a key need for us as we grow. On the marketing activation side, we also have as we mentioned earlier, we haven't done a major campaign yet. And so that's something we need to invest in this year, because this summer is going to be a really big summer for us. We've got the distribution, we're investing in getting these new, with the new partnerships we have, but we need a big campaign to pull that through as well. So, and that's something that has to happen, before summer. And so that's where we need to raise some money for, because that's something we have to spend beforehand. We're also doing a relaunch for our sodas and iced teas under Naked Life Beverages, which we're really excited about as well, and can go into more detail. But there's some activation requirements we have. Of those 40,000 new doors we're looking to go into in on-premise and liquor and for our key accounts, so that's our channel distribution growth, we need resources to push into that. And to get into those, we need trade marketing and trade investment. So as an example, to support the 200 our partnership of 200 on-premise venues, we're going to have to put in with some trade marketing. We're going to have to get some great bar runners. There's a whole heap of elements we have to put in to really support that growth, and that has to happen at the beginning. It's not something that we can just pay for through cash flow later on and hope that we'll pull through. Like when you do these types of in these channels, you have to do it up front. And the last one is the export readiness. So whilst we've dipped our toe in the water with some of these areas with partners, we need to do further market exploration, but then it comes to actually executing. So there's product reformulation, product readiness, and also we need to, obviously as part of that, our negotiations with our different customers on the ground in different areas, it's going to take resources. So they're our key areas that we need capital for to help underpin our growth aspirations. So in short, and I think I only went 5 minutes over, so I'm actually quite happy about that. I'm generally much worse than that. Look, I think it really comes down to, we're currently with the number one non-alcoholic cocktail in Australia with 81% of market share growth. So we're in a really great position to take that forward. I think the other side is our ability to create these great tasting drinks is really proven across the fact that we've got 3 different businesses and have managed to scale those on the back of having great tasting products. So, for us, it's really an important thing to be able to have great tasting products and new great tasting products. So it's a real core competency for us. I think the other element is obviously the industry that we spoke about. It's growing fast. It's one of the fastest growing categories around, both here and overseas. And there's so much headroom in these channels that we haven't even touched on yet. And I guess, and pulling that all together, our key focus is making sure that we're properly resourced to be able to take that next stage of growth. So taking our number one position in grocery, making sure we can get those 40,000 doors here in Australia, making sure that we can replicate that blueprint overseas as well. So I think that's, in a nutshell, that's got kind of me covered off. I think, Anna, if I throw back to yourself here, well, actually, I'll just say, look, obviously, thank you again for joining us and taking the time out of your busy day to hear our story. And, look forward to speaking to as many of you as we can over the next period of time.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. Super insightful. And I'm sure everyone's as excited as you are, but by Naked Life's journey. So we are now going to go into question and answer time. So we've got some that have popped in already. Thank you so much. Please pop your questions in there now. We'll try and get to them all. A first one here, we've got, why has Naked Life chosen to go down the crowdsource funding route as opposed to, say, more traditional capital raising? Great question. Thanks, Steph.
Yeah, great question. Look, the crowd fund is part of our capital program that we've got going on. So it's one part of it. And it's a very strategic part, because if we look at what we've had a lot of success from in the market, it's having brand advocates out there. And for us, in what we're trying to achieve, which is fundamentally changing, helping people change the way that they consume, and having a share registry that has a lot of advocates out there for our brand and pushing that out there in the market all across Australia is something we really wanted to have. So we've spoken over the last few years of how do we build a group of ambassadors for our product, because we do a lot of product testing, we do a lot of branding, we do all these elements. We needed a family to be able to who already are involved with us to be able to throw things around with it. And so when we were going through what our capital plan looked like, this was a really big part of it, because we really liked the idea of having people who are as invested as we are in trying to change the face of drinking in Australia. So it was a bit of a no-brainer actually to have this as a big part of our capital plan.
Awesome. We've got another question here. Does Naked Life have the intention to step into the beer and or wine space?
That's a really good question. It's one that looking at new products is definitely something that's always really high for us. We're naturally people that love launching products. We love developing products. We love doing things that people say can't be done. We love when people sit there and go, holy hell, this tastes amazing. How did you do it? And so, at our core, that's what we love doing. When we were first going through our next round of what we're going to take to market, obviously looking at wine and looking at beer was a big part of what that looks like. It's going to come down to what's the best use of our brand, so and our target market, because we've got some great products that we are bringing to market that are sort of in a wine based, that we know that our brand can really put their name to. But we're having a good look at the beer and wine is dominated by some pretty major players out there, and so it's a very competitive market. And so for us, we'd need to be comfortable there's enough of a point of differentiation for us to be able to really succeed in that market, for that to be what we're going to do. So long answer to a short question is maybe.
Alrighty, we've got a great question here from Eugenia. With your international expansion plans, do you plan to bottle locally before export, or bottle on the ground in those territories? We've got a double-barreled question, but I'll hold until you've answered that.
Oh, it's fine. It's a great question. No one likes shipping heavy, big volumes of liquid across large oceans. There's no easier way to start losing money than doing that. We're very, very clear on that. We're really fortunate in the way that we've formulated our product is such that we can make it concentrate, and we can, of our key proprietary sort of flavored blends. And so we can actually have that canned or bottled anywhere in the world that has the bulk materials, such as, the sweeteners, everything that you can buy locally. We don't need to ever ship that across. And so we have the opportunity to actually do things locally, because sometimes it's actually quite things like where we've set up with our cans. So it's quite globally, there's a lot of canning capability in every country we're looking to go into for the types of cans we're doing. So we're in a really fortunate position that that we can keep our costs down when we go down that route. The flip side of that, though, is in markets that we're testing that are smaller markets, like Singapore, you can actually buy us from the airport in Singapore. So anyone flying via Singapore, make sure you grab a can from there. For some of those smaller markets, we do ship from Australia because the volumes aren't there to justify the minimum run sizes to allow those big runs. So there's certain markets we will be shipping towards, particularly in Asia, where it's closer. But in the big markets, when we do go into those, there definitely is the opportunity to can and bottle on the ground.
Great. Which leads into, actually, I lied, this is a triple-barreled question. Do you own your manufacturing facilities, or do you co-pack?
No, we currently co-pack. The best use of our time and capital as we've been scaling this business is to put it into brand and product development. And, it's definitely something that as we mature as a business, we can explore. But when we look at the growth that's coming and what we need to do to really be the winner and get the best returns in the long term, it's continuing down the model that we're going on. Now, a key part of that, though, is security of supply. So so for us, we've got some great long-term deals with our co-packers where we have priority. We've grown with them, and we've been a key support of them as they've grown. And that's a really important point for us, is having that security of canning supply. And that's something that was very early on we managed to lock up. Look, is it something we'd consider exploring in the future? Once we realize a point that that's the best use of our time is to push for more margin instead of push for more growth, it's definitely something we'll look at.
Awesome. So the triple-barreled element of that question is, in terms of your overseas expansion and the pricing in those markets, do you price match to Australia or to the market?
Oh, no, it's definitely a market view on that one. So and that's something, it's market by market. We have to dictate what's going to be a pricing strategy that's going to allow us to win in market.
Great. Also on the note of pricing, so we've got a question from Joshua who says, non-alc products tend to be quite expensive. Thoughts on future pricing given current inflation levels, and whether prices would need to drop to grow further?
It's a good question, but my gut says that prices go up, not down, just in general, because I know that there's inflationary pressures that come onto us and that gets passed on to the consumer. So I think if I answer this, I'll answer it twofold, because whilst there's, with everything happening, with some interest rates and things, there's sort of, there's a short-term thing there where, from a pricing perspective, maybe there might be more promotions coming in and everything along those lines. But fundamentally, we need to price for the value of our beverages. So making our drinks are much more expensive than making a soft drink. Like to get the complexity and to get the taste of flavor and to get all those things that allow us to be a success, it's multiples times more expensive than a soft drink is because of the ingredients we need to use. And so for us, and it was quite interesting actually, like our pricing, it's very important from a pricing perspective that there's, we reflect the cost of doing business, but second of all, soft drinks cost X amount, up to $10 for a 4-pack. Alcohol costs $20. That's sort of, it's right there. We can't be, if we tried to do some deals to go cheap, then what would happen is we'd lose the fact that we are not just a soft drink, and people start seeing us just as an expensive soft drink. And that's just not a good way to go as a business. So we've worked very hard to make sure that we've got a pricing strategy that reflects not only the category, but also it reflects the inputs that it takes to get a product of our quality.
I think there's also changing mindsets in seeing the value of a drink or a product in its alcohol content and shifting that to actually, the quality of that drink and the ingredients that have gone into it.
100%. I think that's a really, really good point because it's sort of, this is a consumption occasion. This is a celebratory occasion beverage. So, it's one of those things that the comparison to this isn't to a $2 or $3 soft drink. The comparison to this, when we know this from the market, people look at it and go, oh yeah, that's cheaper than alcohol. They don't go, oh, this is more expensive than soft drink, because the way that they perceive the occasion they're consuming it for is an alcohol occasion. So there's actually a value equation for our consumers where they go, okay, no, that's actually, that works for me. It's cheaper than another RTD.
Yeah. We've got a question here from Rob that sort of ties into this. So are you planning on going into different pack formats to chase different market segments, e.g., say kegs or large formats?
Basically, if you can probably see my grin starting halfway through the questions, because it's definitely something we've thought about and looking at. Noticed that a few times. Now, look, we definitely are. There's some opportunities where we've been asked through our relationships with some of the venues. What can you do for us as far as a post-mix style or on a tap or something like that goes? And there's a twofold benefit to that. First of all, everyone makes more margin. If you're not trying to can something and send it out, they make more money, we make more money. It's a really, and you're using less, you're using less of everything. So it's a great format that we're in conversations with. It's tap space is pretty hard to come by when you go into these pubs and clubs. So it's definitely something we're looking into. And we would love to do something like that, because if we take our Italian spritz, for example, which is one of our best sellers, there are some venues out there that just punch out hundreds of these every hour. And so it's sort of, so for them to have, for example, a non-alc version on tap, it'd make sense. So as far as some of the other things we're looking into as well, we have looked at some other formats such as bag and box, for a new style of beverage that wasn't carbonated. And we're also, as far as sort of what other styles, there are some larger bottle formats for some of the new products we've got coming out that, might be a 750 ml champagne style bottle, because that suits the drink that it's being developed for. So once again, long answer to a short question. Yes, we are exploring some other formats to chase down the new customer demand.
Awesome. Long answers are acceptable, Dave. It's fine.
I'm used to giving long answers, so I'm quite conscious of it.
All good. We've got a few questions here, which I'll tie into one. So we've got from Steph, will financial data be provided? And Nick's asked, is Naked Life currently profitable? Now, I'll just give a little bit of info here about how crowdsource funding works. So currently we're in the expression of interest phase. So when the offer goes live, there'll be an offer document which will comprise financial statements of Naked Life. So in the interest of time, because we've got some really awesome questions coming through that I think Dave would love to answer, absolutely please go and check out those financial statements where all of the answers to your questions will be there. You can also, you're more than welcome to chat with Dave, shoot him an email and get a bit of insight into that as well if you're super keen before that offer goes live. So thank you so much for those questions. We've got another question here from Mirel, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Are you able to share the IRR data to support the 81% market share in your category?
Yes.
Easy
Short
answer.
Yeah.
Mirel, we've got your contact details. We'll share that afterwards. Awesome. So we've got a question here from Chris. How long are your contracts? I'm presuming that is, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, with Coles, Woolies and IGA.
Sure. So working with the major supermarkets, there's no contracts as such. So, you've got a ranging period where they've got their range reviews once every year. And during that year, you are then you provide, your products to them throughout that period. And then, they have the ability to, year on year to have different ranging decisions afterwards. I think, if I can maybe read sort of into this question a bit deep, because it's a question that we've been asked before. It's like, oh, well, how are we sure that we're still going to be on shelf next year or something like that? I think the best way to answer that is, in the grocery aisle, all of this revenue that they've received for the non-alc is all brand new revenue. It's incremental. It wasn't in their budgets. As they are, all the beverage buyers look like absolute rock stars at the moment because they have put in these drinks that are now, the whole category is brand new to them. So, what it's done is provided then, the revenue is quite high, the margin for them is quite high. So it's become a real cornerstone for their growth plans into the future. And it's a big brand new category for them. So so because of that, you then have a position where they'll back in a few different players. So whoever's performing best, they'll expand the ranges from. Whoever's not performing, they contract the ranges from. And we've already seen that with some of our competitors where their range has gone from 60% of the stores down to 18% of the stores, while we went from 50 to 80. And so basically everything is quite a commercial point of view, that if it's making money for them and it's making margin and it's growing, then they'll keep giving more space and putting more to it. So I think that's probably the best way to answer about the sort of the longevity of this as the longevity of I guess Naked Life in say the supermarkets comes down to understanding, is the industry growing? Is it continuing to grow, and are we best placed to service that because of our sales rates? And I think they're the things that give you longevity in a market.
Awesome. We've got a few similar questions here as well, so I'll try and combine them too. So from Tim, we've got, what are the biggest risks you see involved, and what do you see as the current biggest challenges to your current business plan?
Challenges. Look, I think I look at our current challenges. They're mostly based around the ability to scale during this time where there's how do I explain? The next 2 years is going to be critical in making sure that we, I often call it a land grab, that when you're at the beginning of these markets where they haven't quite, retailers some of the retailers are a bit slow to jump on board, like, on-premise or liquor have been slower to adopt it than grocery. But over the next couple of years, it's going to be everywhere. Every liquor store is going to have non-alc. Every single bar is just going to have a menu where it says, alc, non-alc, and here are your options. But we're not there yet. So our biggest challenge is making sure that as they're all coming on and slowly, turning, because there's a lot of them out there, and to get it, it's not like a Coles or a Woolworths where you can sort of get great, where you get lots of them in one go. It's a ground game that we need to develop. So one of our biggest challenges is making sure we do that effectively. We partner with the right groups that can get us scale into these different areas. We have the right people in our company who have the skill sets to open up these doors, because it's going to be a lot of work to open all that up. So I think our key challenge, if I look at what the key challenge there is really making sure we do that as effectively, efficiently, and quickly as possible, because it's much easier getting into something when no one's there. It's much harder trying to displace someone from there. So that's why it's a really, really good question, because that's exactly why we're here raising capital, because we realize that our biggest challenge is not necessarily, it's not a risk, but it's not making the most out of the environment that's currently ahead of us, because we can see it so clearly. We can see where we can be. We see what we could be. We can see what it's going to take to get that. And it's just executing on that.
Awesome. And tying into this, Samantha's asked, have you considered the impact on these growth plans if Australia and or other countries go into recession? If you had a crystal ball, right?
Yeah, if I had a crystal ball, if I had a crystal ball and we go into recession, I can imagine there'll be it might have an impact. But I think the other side of where we really see our growth plan over the next few years, and the reason why we're not so concerned about that is because our big wins are coming from distribution, not so much, if the market buys a few less, if it contracts in how much people are spending by a few percent on this type of category, that's not going to change whether or not as a category will be in there as we come out the other side. Our key growth path is getting these distribution wins. So even though there might be an impact from people tightening up their belts a little bit, our growth is coming from getting those 40,000 new stores and making sure we're there. Because you can imagine what's going to happen when people start spending again. If we've done this properly over the next few years, because we've had the capital and the team to get it right, we'll be in those places. And then when people open their, if the worst comes to worst and there's a big recession, people start spending again in a year and we'll already be everywhere ready to go. So whilst we see it as a challenge and something that it's the elephant in the room, that's not where our growth is going to come from. And that's not where our long-term ambition is it's not going to change our long-term ambition or getting there.
We've got a few questions here from Kedar. Again, I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Looks great and congratulations on the achievements today. They've got a few questions. Are the sugar-free products added sugar-free or no sugar at all? So no fruit sugars?
Great question. The bane of my existence is the health washing by using no added sugar and piling it in with fruit juice, which is it's just literally, if I ask anyone in our office, it's my most hated thing because we've always been sugar-free. And to do that, it's much harder to develop something that tastes great. Everything tastes good if you pile sugar into it. And so whenever I see low sugar on a drink, no added sugar on a drink, it just drives me insane. And so ours are, probably the best way to put it, they're all under 7 calories per drink. So we're sugar-free, no added sugar.
Awesome. They've also asked, are the competition numbers against alcoholic or non-alcoholic products / brands, i.e. iced teas, kombucha, etc.?
No, those numbers that that you saw about sort of the competition, if I'm answering this correctly, so where we saw Heineken in there, is Heineken Zero, so their non-alc option, where there was Gordon's, it was their non-alc gin and their non-alc G&Ts at a range. So it's not against alcohol, it's against our equivalent non-alc competition on the shelf in the grocery. So where we're actually competing like for like.
Yeah. And on that, how many SKUs do you have currently? Are all available in Woolies and Coles, etc.?
Yeah, good question. We've got 15 SKUs currently available across Woolworths and about 9 available at Coles. About 6 of them available across Dan Murphy's. And so it's really a spread of, depending on where people sort of buy it from. We've got differing ranging, but our whole 15 is available across about 600 Woolworths stores. So when you actually go there and you see them, for those who've actually seen those, actually it's people call it the wall of naked. And so it's pretty funny because you go there and you see these, it's these 2 big shelves of all of our SKUs in there. It's an amazing, it's amazing. We love going into those stores and seeing those, but then obviously in some of the smaller store formats, there might only be 8 SKUs in Woolworths. So, but yeah, on average, at Woolworths, an average of 800 stores across 15 of our SKUs. So yeah, there's a lot of availability, which we're really proud of.
Awesome. And we've got a quick question here about other products available on online platforms, i.e. Amazon. You did go through your distribution, but that should be a pretty easy answer for you.
Are we available through the other channels?
Online, i.e. Amazon.
Yeah. I'll have to get back to you on the Amazon one. I think we're either working on that or we are, but we also sell a lot through our own e-commerce channels. We also sell a heap through the Coles and Woolies online channels, as well as a lot of third-party distributors as well. So, but the Amazon specifically, to give that an answer, is we either are or we're going to be very shortly.
Awesome. And we've got a few double-barreled questions here just in terms of international expansion. So do you have any plans for highly populated countries like China and India?
Yes, we do. It's on a case-by-case basis. So the amount of work it actually takes to open up some of these each country is a lot. Whilst we've got 4 people who are our product team specialists, every time we need to go into a new country, the amount of regulations, packaging, and all these elements we go to, there's a lot of work to go into that. So we've got a very we're looking into Southeast Asia, but that does include China, and we are in conversations with a distributor. I think we're soon to sign who will do both Hong Kong and China. So from that point of view, India is at a secondary level. We'll look at that next, but at the moment we've got Asia, the US, and Europe on our key export on our priority list at the moment.
Yeah, Rowan has also asked on international expansion and countries you are targeting, such as Indonesia, Islamic countries, Japan, etc. If they've heard correctly, there are plenty of non-drinkers for sure, but do these markets need to go through an education phase to get them ready for a product like this? i.e. a general market knows there is more than just tea and soft drink as a choice. Rowan, I think your question makes sense. I think as well it ties into, you're talking in terms of where you see these growth opportunities and the resourcing that might be required to go after these international expansions. Would love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Okay. I think maybe I'll try and answer this from just an actual market growth and activation in a new market at a sort of more general level, because it's a really good point. It does take resources to educate groups on a new style of product. It also takes a lot to properly activate that in the market. So where we go into these new markets, we have to choose a partner that's going to be ready to do a lot of heavy lifting. So that's the first part. So it's not, the model that we're taking into these markets is to partner with a group that already has a portfolio of beverages or food drinks and have relationships into the key supermarkets, the key bars, and all these areas. So they're our feet on the ground. They're also the ones who will do a lot of the market awareness and the sort of the sampling and things like that to help grow the market. So a lot of that's on our partner that we work with to open up. From the with the respect to the market education point of view, in these large populous countries, there is a lot of market education to do, but you also get, by virtue of the fact that there's such, you take Indonesia, hundreds of millions of people in the country, whilst the masses, there might need to be a staggered education path, which will take a lot of investment. There's still a lot of people early on who are early adopters who would pick this up straight away because, like in Australia, if a country's got 10 times the population, there's going to be 10 times the early adopters who are also ready for this. So there are a lot of populations that are already ready to go without having to put a lot of that investment in first. So that's a secondary plan. Once we've proven in that market that there's, we've got a base of followers and it's followed a similar path of growth as Australia, then we'd look to reinvest even more to do that education path.
Awesome, thank you. We've got a few questions here, which I'll also, again, tie into one, and I'll just do a little bit of a education piece about how crowdsource funding works. So we've got some questions about what does an exit look like for Naked Life? For example, do you intend to list on the ASX? For some people on this webinar, it might be your first investment through equity crowdfunding. I'd just love to highlight what kind of asset class this is. So when you buy shares in a company like Naked Life through a platform like Birchal, you're buying fully owned ordinary shares. Now, these shares are considered illiquid as they can't easily be transferred or sold. However, there are numerous possible circumstances that may create an opportunity for shareholders to exit the business. Now, these include, but obviously aren't limited to, a trade purchase of the company, a listed on a registered stock exchange, for example, the ASX, a private equity investment in the company, a share buyback by the company. Now, obviously, these are typically earlier stage, higher risk ventures. Obviously, companies like Naked Life going through this process, they've really targeted these growth opportunities. So I highly encourage you to read the offer document when it becomes available. In terms of, there's obviously limitations to how we are regulated by ASIC in this space, particularly with view of future or sort of prospective financial information of which exits would come under it. But please don't hesitate to reach out to David and the team as well if you've got any further questions there. We've got another question here from Carly. What keeps you awake at night for Naked Life?
Absolutely everything. I'm the worst sleeper going around. It is so that's actually a really, really interesting question. How do I answer that one? I think the thing that keeps me awake the most is how are we going to execute. Like, we've done such a good job to get to where we are. I'm so proud of our team and what we've achieved in this short amount of time. But when you see the fact that it's then yours to take because you've done the groundwork, you've got yourself in the best position to get there, it becomes more real. And so not then being able to achieve it because we've screwed it up, because we didn't have the right funding, we didn't have the right strategy, we didn't execute properly. That's actually what keeps me up. So as an example, life was easier when we were trying to grow it and it was like, oh, I wonder if there's a market here. What could we, hopefully there is, let's try and grow. Like, because that's all in some ways speculative. It's like, you're climbing up the mountain, but now we sort of got to the point where like, holy hell, this is real. It's growing. We've got a bloody good start in this, and you map out your next strategy and then you see it. That's like, it's not a maybe. It's just, it's there to get taken and it's there for us to execute on. So the fear of, in some ways, the anxiety for me sits around not achieving our potential because I can now see it. And that keeps me awake because, when you map it out, you see what it's going to take and you see what you can be as a business and as a team. My biggest fear is not achieving that because and that does keep me awake at night, I must say, because it comes back to, we've got a great team who are incredibly dedicated in doing whatever it takes to achieve our plan. And I feel as the sort of, everyone works so hard and puts in blood, sweat and tears into this that, it's, doing right by the team and making sure that we can walk through the doors we've opened, like rock stars, is probably the things that keep me awake at night.
Love it. All righty. Now, just conscious of time, and we do have a few questions left, so I'll try and cover a few of them now. But as we said, if we don't get to your questions, the Naked Life team will reach out to you and, really try and help answer all of those burning questions, which I'm sure you still might have. So Heidi's asked, is there a minimum investment? We've got a question here as well about current shareholders and valuation. And then we've also got a question here about when will the offer document be available? So to answer all of those three questions, the offer document will be available on the 13th of June, which is when our offer is going live. So offer document, constitution and subscription agreement will be all available for your perusal. That will contain capital structure, so you'll be able to see current shareholders in the business. That will have the valuation in it, and it will also have the minimum parcel size as well. So do keep your eye out on your emails. If you have not expressed interest already, please do so, because you will be first to know when that early access period goes live. So we'll be going live only to that expression of interest list to start with. And quite often offers will sell out during that early access period before we go public. So absolutely get your expression of interest list, get your expression of interest in now. And as I said, please reach out to the Naked Life team if you have any further questions that maybe come to you at 3 a.m. tonight. Don't email Dave then though, he might be online, but he'll get back to you shortly. That's enough from me. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. We obviously really appreciate your time. I'll hand over to Dave to say his final thank yous and wrap up.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for your time today and for taking the opportunity to hear our story and where we're going, and also just for having interest in us. So thanks a lot, and looking forward to chatting to you all and helping to answer whatever questions you have through the process.
We also have another webinar next week, but I can appreciate you may not want to do that, so don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.